Imagine a world of towering gates, manicured lawns stretching towards an opulent mansion, a symbol of immense wealth and power. This was the domain of a tycoon, a man who seemingly had everything. Yet beneath this veneer of success lay a chilling secret, a decision so callous it would curdle the blood. For in the shadow of such grandeur, a loyal, aging companion was deemed disposable, callously discarded and left to face a lonely, terrifying end. What force, what twist of fate could possibly intervene in such a bleak scenario, connecting this act of heartless cruelty to one of Hollywood's most beloved figures, and ultimately leading to the tycoon losing the very symbol of his uncaring empire? The chain of events that unfolded is a stark reminder that sometimes justice arrives in the most unexpected of guises, and compassion can bloom where it's least anticipated. Mr. Alistair Blackwood was a man defined by his acquisitions, sprawling businesses, rare art and properties that screamed of his financial dominance. His emotional landscape, however, was barren, a stark contrast to the lushness of his estates. He viewed relationships, even with those who offered unwavering loyalty, through a transactional lens. If something or someone no longer served his meticulously crafted image or convenience, they were simply removed. His capacity for empathy seemed to have withered long ago, replaced by an insatiable appetite for status and a chilling detachment from the simpler, more profound connections that truly enrich a life, leaving those around him feeling more like assets than individuals. Buddy, an aging golden retriever, had once been a vibrant part of Blackwood's carefully curated public image. In his youth, Buddy's playful antics and wagging tail were useful props for photo opportunities, projecting a facade of warmth and family values that Blackwood himself sorely lacked. But time, as it does for all, had taken its toll. Buddy was now slower, his muzzle greyed, his once bright eyes clouded with age and the early onset of ailments that required care and patience. To Blackwood, Buddy had transformed from an asset into an inconvenient truth, a reminder of mortality and a blemish on the pristine, ever-youthful image he sought to maintain for the world. The decision, when it came, was made with the same cold pragmatism Blackwood applied to underperforming stocks. There would be no gentle goodbyes, no search for a comfortable retirement home, not even the mercy of a veterinarian's final kindness. Instead, Blackwood orchestrated a far crueler fate. Under the cloak of a late evening, he instructed his driver to take Buddy to a remote, desolate stretch of woodland far from the city, a place where the old dog's fading barks would be swallowed by the uncaring wilderness. The instruction was simple: leave him and drive away. For Blackwood, this was merely an efficient disposal of a problem, a final, heartless calculation. The car door opened, and Buddy, perhaps expecting a walk, was gently nudged out. The familiar scent of his master was quickly replaced by the damp, alien smells of the forest floor. He looked back, his old eyes filled with a bewildered confusion. As the taillights of the luxury sedan receded into the darkness, a pinpoint of red that soon vanished entirely. Left alone, the silence of the woods pressed in, heavy and menacing. The sudden abandonment, the unfamiliar surroundings, and the encroaching cold sent shivers of fear through his frail body, a stark contrast to the plush comforts he had, until recently, known as his only life. Buddy's initial hours were a testament to his dwindling spirit and failing strength. He wandered aimlessly, whimpering softly, the instincts of survival dulled by a lifetime of domesticity, and now the crushing weight of betrayal. Hunger gnawed at his belly and thirst parched his throat, but the familiar bowls of food and water were nowhere to be found. He tried to find shelter from the biting wind, huddling beneath a dense thicket of bushes, the damp leaves offering little comfort. Each rustle in the undergrowth, each unfamiliar sound, sent fresh waves of anxiety through him, as the reality of his desperate situation began to fully dawn. Meanwhile, far from this scene of quiet tragedy, Keanu Reeves, a man known as much for his understated kindness as for his iconic film roles, was enjoying a rare day of anonymity. He often sought solace on the open road, the hum of his motorcycle a meditative soundtrack to his thoughts. These solitary rides were his escape, a way to reconnect with the simple, unvarnished realities of the world, a stark contrast to the often superficial glitz of Hollywood. He had no inkling that his path, guided by little more than a whim, was about to intersect with a life hanging precariously in the balance. Keanu's public persona, one of genuine humility and a deep-seated empathy, particularly for animals, wasn't an act. Countless anecdotes, often shared by awestruck fans or grateful strangers, painted a consistent picture of a man who moved through the world with a quiet grace and a readiness to help. This inherent compassion was not reserved for grand gestures. It was woven into the fabric of his daily interactions. It was this very nature that made him unknowingly susceptible to the silent plea that was soon to cross his path, preparing an unseen stage for an intervention that Buddy so desperately needed. Buddy's condition was deteriorating rapidly. The exposure, lack of sustenance, and the sheer emotional trauma of abandonment were taking their toll on his aged body. He had collapsed near a seldom-used logging trail, his breathing shallow, his once bright fur matted and damp. The will to move, to even lift his head, was ebbing away. He was a picture of utter desolation, a loyal heart broken by the one human he had trusted implicitly. The vibrant life that had once filled him was dimming, a faint ember struggling against an overwhelming darkness, almost ready to surrender. A flicker of movement caught his eye, a deer darting across the distant tree line, but Buddy lacked the strength to react, to even feel curiosity. The world around him was fading into a blur of greens and browns. He had tried to bark earlier, a weak, raspy sound that barely carried beyond the immediate vicinity, a desperate, unanswered call for help. Now, even that small effort seemed too monumental. He closed his eyes, a sigh escaping his tired lungs, the cold seeping deeper into his bones. It felt like the end, a lonely surrender in an indifferent world. A faint, almost inaudible whimper, a last vestige of hope, escaped Buddy's lips. It was a sound born of pure despair, a final, fragile plea to a world that seemed to have forgotten him entirely. The sound was so soft it was almost lost to the rustling leaves and the distant chirping of birds, a whisper of suffering in the vast, uncaring expanse of the wilderness. For any ordinary passerby, if one were to even venture down this secluded path, it would have been easily missed, dismissed as a trick of the wind or a far-off creature. The weight of his abandonment pressed down on Buddy, a physical ache that mirrored the deep wound in his spirit. Each passing moment felt like an eternity, stretching his suffering. The vibrant memories of chasing bulls, of gentle pats and warm firesides now seemed like a cruel taunt from a life irrevocably lost. He was at the absolute precipice, teetering on the edge of oblivion, the fight for life nearly extinguished by the crushing reality of his solitude and the profound betrayal he had endured. Was this truly to be his final chapter, alone and unmourned? On this particular day, Keanu felt an uncharacteristic pull to deviate from his usual route. A lesser-known, winding country road beckoned, one he hadn't explored before. Perhaps it was the allure of the unknown, or maybe a subtle, inexplicable intuition guiding his wheels. He turned onto the gravel path, the crunch of the tires a stark contrast to the smooth asphalt he'd left behind, unknowingly steering himself towards an encounter that would profoundly impact several lives, setting in motion a series of truly extraordinary events. As he navigated a gentle curve, something at the periphery of his vision registered, an unnatural stillness, a shape that didn't quite belong to the landscape of fallen branches and overgrown shrubs. It was subtle, easily missed by a less observant eye, or by someone not attuned to the delicate imbalances of nature. But for Keanu, whose senses were often heightened by his solitary journeys, it was enough to pique a sense of unease, a faint alarm bell ringing in the back of his mind, prompting him to slow his pace. His initial curiosity quickly sharpened into a more defined concern. He brought his motorcycle to a halt, the engine's rumble dying into an almost profound silence, broken only by the sounds of the forest. He dismounted, his boots crunching on the loose gravel, and approached the area with a cautious yet deliberate stride. There was an instinct, a gut feeling that something was amiss, a feeling that he had learned to trust over the years. He peered into the dense undergrowth, his eyes scanning for the source of his disquiet, and then he saw him. Curled into a tight, shivering ball, almost camouflaged by the dead leaves, lay Buddy. The dog was so still, so utterly depleted, that for a heart-stopping moment Keanu feared he was too late. The sight was a punch to the gut, the matted fur, the skeletal frame visible beneath, the shallow, labored breaths. A wave of profound sadness, quickly followed by a surge of protective anger, washed over Keanu. He knelt, his movements slow and gentle, not wanting to startle the distressed animal further. Keanu's examination was tender and immediate. He spoke in soft, reassuring tones, his voice a soothing balm in the stark silence that had enveloped Buddy's suffering. He could feel the dog's ribs, the rapid, weak pulse beneath his fingertips. The signs of extreme neglect and cruel abandonment were undeniable. The dehydration, The emaciation, the sores from lying too long on the damp ground, and the deep, haunting despair in the barely open eyes. It was a testament to a profound betrayal, and Keanu's heart ached for the creature before him. There was no hesitation, no internal debate. The only thought in Keanu's mind was the urgent need to act, to save this life so carelessly discarded. The injustice of it, the sheer cruelty of leaving a loyal companion to such a fate, ignited a quiet fury within him. He carefully assessed how best to move Buddy without causing further pain or distress. This was no longer just a found animal. This was a mission, a responsibility he felt compelled to undertake with every fiber of his being, a silent vow to make things right. Gently, ever so gently, Keanu scooped Buddy into his arms. The old dog was surprisingly light, a testament to his starvation. He whimpered softly, a sound of pain, and perhaps a dawning flicker of hope. Keanu cradled him close, offering what warmth his body could provide, murmuring words of comfort and promise. He carefully secured Buddy, perhaps using his own jacket to create a makeshift sling or blanket, ensuring the dog was as stable and comfortable as possible for the journey. Ahead, his mind already racing to the nearest veterinary clinic. The ride was a careful, urgent dash against time. Keanu chose his path with precision, avoiding bumps where he could, all the while acutely aware of the fragile life he held. He could feel the faint tremor of Buddy's shivering and the shallow rhythm of his breathing. Each mile felt like an eternity, his focus entirely on reaching help. He might have used his phone to frantically search for the closest emergency vet, his voice calm but firm as he explained the situation, preparing them for their arrival. Upon reaching the veterinary clinic, a sense of controlled urgency filled the air. The staff, perhaps alerted by Keanu's call or recognizing the gravity of the situation upon seeing Buddy, moved swiftly. The old dog was immediately taken to the treatment area, where veterinarians began emergency procedures to stabilize him. The initial prognosis was guarded. Buddy was severely dehydrated, malnourished, and suffering from exposure. But there was a spark, a faint resilience that gave the medical team and Keanu a sliver of hope. While Buddy was receiving critical care, his weak body hooked up to IV drips and monitors, Keanu noticed something almost hidden beneath the matted fur around the dog's neck. It was a high-quality, though now tattered, leather collar. Attached to it, almost obscured by dirt, was a small, engraved metal tag. He carefully cleaned it, his brow furrowed in concentration. The engraving was faint, but discernible. It bore a name, Buddy, and beneath it, a phone number and an address that pointed to a rather palatial estate in a notoriously wealthy enclave not too far away. A cold knot of anger tightened in Keanu's chest. This wasn't the collar of a stray, nor of a dog from a modest home who had simply gotten lost. This was the mark of an owner who had every means to provide care, yet had chosen deliberate, cruel abandonment. The desire for Buddy's recovery was now coupled with a steely resolve to understand how such a thing could happen, and to ensure that the person responsible faced the consequences of their heartless actions. He knew, with a certainty that settled deep in his soul, that he couldn't just walk away once Buddy was safe. The information on the tag, or perhaps a microchip scan initiated by the vet at Keanu's request, painted an undeniable picture. The address led directly to the sprawling, ostentatious mansion of one Alistair Blackwood, a name synonymous with ruthless business tactics and an almost legendary level of personal wealth. The contrast between the opulent residence and the near-fatal condition of the dog who once lived there was grotesque. Keanu felt a growing sense of indignation. This wasn't just neglect, it was a profound moral failing, a betrayal of the deepest trust an animal can offer. With Buddy beginning a slow, arduous journey towards recovery, perhaps under Keanu's watchful eye in a quiet corner of his own home, or in a specialized foster care he quickly arranged and funded, Keanu made a decision. He wasn't interested in creating a public spectacle or a media circus. His aim was more personal, more direct. He needed to confront Mr. Blackwood, to look into the eyes of the man who could so easily discard a life. He wanted to understand, if understanding was even possible, the mindset behind such an act, and to deliver a message about accountability. The gates of Blackwood's estate were as imposing as his reputation. Keanu, unannounced, requested to see the magnate. The staff, initially dismissive, were somewhat flustered by the unexpected appearance of a recognizable celebrity. After a brief, hushed consultation, Keanu was grudgingly led through opulent, sterile hallways to a vast office where Mr. Blackwood sat, exuding an air of irritated authority, clearly displeased by the interruption to his meticulously scheduled day. Blackwood's initial reaction upon seeing Keanu Reeves was one of mild surprise, quickly morphing into a patronizing curiosity. What could such a famous actor possibly want with him? When Keanu calmly, yet firmly, brought up the subject of an old, abandoned golden retriever named Buddy, Blackwood's expression soured. He waved a dismissive hand, his tone laced with arrogance. "Ah, the dog," he sneered. "Past its prime, became a nuisance. I simply had it removed. It's a trivial matter, hardly worth your concern, Mr. Reeves." Keanu, maintaining an almost unnerving composure in the face of such blatant callousness, proceeded to describe in quiet, measured detail the state in which he had found Buddy, the starvation, the fear, the near-fatal exposure. He spoke not with overt anger, but with a profound, sorrowful gravity that seemed to fill the opulent office. Blackwood, however, remained utterly unmoved, his face a mask of indifference, perhaps even a hint of annoyance at being lectured about what he considered his personal property and his right to dispose of it as he saw fit. It was in that moment, witnessing Blackwood's complete lack of remorse, his casual cruelty, and his almost pathological attachment to the superficial trappings of his wealth while displaying such a poverty of spirit, that an idea, audacious and wholly unexpected, formed in Keanu's mind. He looked around the vast, impersonal office, at the cold marble and expensive art, and then back at the man who embodied such profound moral emptiness. Then Keanu Reeves, in a calm, level voice, made Alistair Blackwood an offer. He wanted to buy his mansion. Blackwood was visibly stunned, his arrogant composure momentarily shattered. He stared at Keanu, searching for a sign of a joke, a prank. "Buy my house?" he stammered, confusion warring with suspicion. "Why on earth would you want to do that?" Keanu's response was simple, yet deeply resonant. He explained that he wanted to ensure Buddy, the dog Blackwood had so easily discarded, could live out his remaining days in comfort and peace, in the very home from which he had been cruelly exiled. And, implicitly, he wanted to strip Blackwood of a symbol of status he so clearly didn't deserve. The negotiation, if it could be called that, was tense, but surprisingly swift. Perhaps Blackwood was facing undisclosed financial pressures, or maybe he was simply so unnerved by Keanu's quiet intensity and the bizarre nature of the offer that he saw a quick, albeit strange, way out of an uncomfortable situation. Or perhaps, deep down, a flicker of shame, long dormant, was pricked. Whatever the reason, after a period of stony silence and a few curt exchanges, a price was agreed upon. The contracts were drawn up with astonishing speed. The mansion, Blackwood's monument, to his own ego, was sold. Buddy's return to the mansion was a quiet triumph. He was still frail, but his eyes now held a spark of light, his tail offering a weak but hopeful wag as Keanu gently carried him across the threshold. No longer an unwanted burden, he was now the most cherished resident. The vast, manicured lawns that were once mere scenery became his personal playground. Plush rugs and sunlit rooms, once forbidden or ignored, were now his to explore and nap in, his every comfort attended to with a tenderness he had almost forgotten existed. Keanu didn't intend to make the grand estate his permanent residence. Instead, he envisioned it transformed. Perhaps it became a personal sanctuary for him and his own beloved animals, a quiet retreat. Or, more fittingly, he might have established a small, dedicated foundation there, a haven for other rescued senior animals, a place where the forgotten and the overlooked could find solace and care in their twilight years. The mansion, once a symbol of cold indifference, was slowly being imbued with a new purpose, one of warmth, compassion, and second chances. The poetic justice of the situation was not lost on those who eventually learned the story. Blackwood, stripped of his most prominent status symbol and facing the quiet scorn of a community that had once fawned over his wealth, found his world significantly diminished. The sale, done so quickly, perhaps left him financially secure but morally bankrupt in the eyes of many. He was forced to confront, perhaps for the first time, the hollowness of a life built solely on material gain and devoid of genuine connection or kindness. Buddy, under Keanu's gentle care and surrounded by affection, blossomed. The once skeletal dog began to regain weight. His coat grew thicker and glossier, and the haunted look in his eyes was replaced by one of contentment and trust. He enjoyed slow walks in the garden, long naps in sunbeams, and the gentle reassurance of a loving hand. He lived out his golden years in the very place that had once been the site of his neglect, a living testament to the transformative power of compassion and the extraordinary turn his fate had taken. The tale of Keanu Reeves, the discarded dog, and the Tycoon's mansion became something of a local legend, a whispered story of unexpected heroism and profound kindness. It served as a powerful reminder that true value lies not in what one possesses, but in how one treats the most vulnerable among us. The mansion itself, no longer just bricks and mortar, stood as a beacon of hope, a symbol that even in the face of callousness, compassion can prevail and rewrite the most tragic of endings into one of inspiring resilience and heartwarming justice. This incredible journey, from heart-wrenching cruelty and near-certain death to a rescue fueled by pure compassion and a truly astonishing act of justice, shows the profound impact one person's empathy can have. Keanu Reeves didn't just save a dog. He bought a mansion to ensure that dogs' comfort and, in doing so, delivered a powerful message against indifference. What are your thoughts on this remarkable turnaround? Share your reactions in the comments below. Spread this story of kindness by sharing the video, and subscribe for more tales that lift the spirit and prove that heroes walk among us. Have you ever seen such an amazing act of compassion for an animal? We'd love to hear about it.